hands-on complete experience on a real-time project, 6 months should be enough for you to take up certification after you complete this particular training. So this training is going to give you a complete knowledge on each of the concepts that you're supposed to be knowing, and also we'll be having a lab kind of a session. So still not sure, because I conduct online trainings. For online trainings we have a VM kind of a setup for doing our regular practices. I'm not sure how we are going to proceed with the setup that we are going to have and what type. So I think that will iron out as we keep going through this course. But to start off, let's cover this particular presentation, so which will give you a heads-on start on what exactly you can expect and whether this is the right course for you. All right, so let's begin. Okay, now what we're going to start off with is a small knowledge on architecture. Now again, see, when you talk about WCS architecture, based on from which angle you're looking at the architecture might be different. So if you're talking from the administration architecture level, we're going to talk at the server level and what components that server is made up of. But if suppose you're talking from a developer's perspective, the architecture is going to be completely different. So that is, you're going to talk it from the container level, the EJB container, the web container, whatever. So what we are going to do is we're going to talk about from the admin perspective. All right. So what we're going to basically talk about, what are the different components that make up of WCS. So when you say WCS, WCS is not a single product, but it's a suite of products. At a minimal, it has got a database component. Of course, like you know, it's an application server component, and any application server you need, needs to have a web server. Now, of course, web server needs, if you're talking about IHS in this case, it needs to have a plugin, and this is the minimum component. But this, when we say minimum, this is what you get when you buy a WCS product suite. But this is not enough. You need to have some payment integration and search integrations. So many other components has to go along with. Again, when you talk about WCS, it's more of an order capture tool. So WCS helps you to capture the orders. So I can come and place an order at your site. But once I place an order, you're supposed to fulfill that particular order. So there are so many back-end jobs that needs to get done in WCS. So it has to integrate with a lot of other products. So we're going to talk about architecture from the product level, or each of the components that WCS is made up of, and how each of these components interact with other products to have a full streamlined kind of a session between each and every aspect that is needed for capturing the order, fulfilling the order, and till we have a, it's also about capturing the marketing statistics. It's about selling online today. It's all about selling smartly, trying to get more. See, when you set up something, you need to have a better business on it. So that is, you need to know what is selling, what is not selling, and how can you promote that something which is not selling, and how overall to have a good conversion ratio. So we're going to talk about from that architecture aspect. So that is, we're going to talk about what are the different components that is minimum necessary for WCS, and how does WCS integrate with other product that is needed, have a full end-to-end kind of a setup. All right, and we are also going to talk about in what all ways can you distribute this component among multiple system topologies. So that is, can you have all of this on a single box, or should you distribute it in multiple boxes, and how else you can have a better high availability and high performance kind of a topology. So we're going to talk about that as well, and I'm sure you already have an knowledge about the different editions of commerce, but we're going to talk about what are the different editions that is available in WCS, and what is the difference between each of the edition, and what is the right one for your project. So that is, when you sign up for a project with your client, you'll have to decide what is best for them. Of course, based on the cost factor also it's going to matter, but again, there are some things. So if they are asking, we want this, you'll have to tell them, yeah, you have to get this edition. So if they're trying to get down on the cost but get all the kinds of features, of course it's not going to be possible, right? So we need to understand what is the difference between the main editions. So we're going to talk about a high level picture of what are the different editions available within WCS. So WCS does not come in a single edition, comes in multiple editions, like how you have as base edition, express edition, and network deployment. Similarly, WCS comes in different edition. We're going to talk about the different editions, and then here we're going to talk about the component architecture. Again, component is product architecture here. What are the different products that WCS is made of? All right. Now we have co-matrix, we have Solar, which is already integrated today. But apart from that, you need to have other integrations, and IBM has tied up with Sterling, and in fact taken over Sterling. So they put the supply chain architecture totally. OMS, WMS, you might have heard about. Discuss about all those components when we get into the particular course. So this is going to be in the architecture sections. Basically, we are getting introduced to WCS in this particular section, right? Any questions here?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Fine, Guna.
All right. So this might take about 1.5 hour session. So that means this should take us about 4 to 6 hours. Again, I go at your pace. So I just say 4 to 6 hours, because if you want me to finish, I can finish in 3 hours. But generally, I take questions as we go along and we complete. So 4 to 6 hours is what I estimate this particular section to cover. All right. So once we have some basic knowledge on what WCS is, we go on to the next part, which is the installation part. All right. So though installation, configuration, migration is the topic of this slide, configuration migration is going to be lesser here, but configuration is going to be covered in the next slide in more detail. All right. So installation. So when we talk about installation, we're going to talk about what are the hardware and software requirements if you want to set up WCS version 7. All right. So this could be for any edition of WCS 7, but what are the hardware and the software requirements? Again, this is going to be, we're going to talk about minimum requirements, we're going to talk about recommended requirements, and we are also going to talk about what you need to do, how you decide on what should be your production requirements. Now, minimum and recommended recommendations are fine, but your production setup is going to be completely different from whatever. So the minimum and recommended recommendations will not work for all setups. So every production. So you might be working for a small client, a medium client, who might be getting only about, let me say, 70 to 80 orders a day. Or you could be working for another client who's getting about 300 to 400 orders a day. Now both their setups are not going to be different. So both their production setups are going to be different. So we're going to talk about that as well. So it's not just the minimum and the recommended settings. We are also going to talk about what should be your production settings and how you decide what should be it, because there are various parameters that you should be aware of. We're going to talk about that. Now, as you've already been involved with any multiple projects, when you talk about installation, you have different types of platforms. Development server, and you would have worked with the staging server. We'll talk about what is authoring server. You might have come across authoring server, but with respect to WCS, what is authoring server we'll discuss. Then the runtime, which is your production setups. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to install any of the setups in both single and multi-tiered. So that is, you can install all the components of WCS that we did in the previous. Of course, we didn't discuss in detail, but what are the components that you have, the multiple components, all can go on a single box, or it can go on multiple servers to get you high availability and high performance. We're going to talk about what all configurations, like in the previous slide, we discussed about the different system topologies. So here we're going to see how we can set up those setups in multi-tiered environments. All right. Now, development server is going to be a server which is generally available within your intranet. And generally what happens when your developers make any changes, they would like to see their changes on a server runtime. So we have a development server to cater to their needs. Now, apart from the staging and authoring, you might also have testing environments, which I have not mentioned here. But testing and UAT environments are going to mimic your runtime and staging environments. So that's why it is not mentioned here, but those are the environments, but it's going to be one of these. All right. Now, runtime environment, this is your production environment, the one which your end users, your customers will come and view, and in WCS application, it's for shopping. So people will come and shop at your site. Now, So let us say this is your production setup. Now this is visible to the internet users, and internet users will connect to this and keep doing the transactions, whatever that is supposed to be. Now at the same time, you might be managing your store, so that you might add new products, you might change some product images, you might keep updating the product price, whatever, or updating the inventory, whatever. So you generally don't do it directly on the production. Why? Because it's going to affect the end user shopping behavior. So that means, let us say you're changing a particular product image. So right now he is looking at a particular product and he sees a particular image, and when he does some action, he suddenly sees the image changing. Now he might be confused whether this is the same product the product page I am in. So generally, on a production setup, you don't directly make changes. So what do? You have a parallel setup which has the same data as your production, and you make changes to this environment. We call this, so your business team will make changes to this environment, which we call as the staging environment. So this contains the same data as your production, but the thing is, this is visible only inside your intranet. So that means it is not visible to your end users, to your shoppers. So whatever changes you are making here is not on the production database. So what happens is, whatever changes you're making, you're doing it internally. So once you've made all the changes, what you might do during your off-peak hours, you push the changes to your production in one go. So that is, you propagate the changes that are in staging to your production. So we call this as stage propagation. So whatever changes that you have made, you push it into your production during off-peak hours, when the load on your servers are off, or almost zero kind of time. So you push the changes. So this is what is staging environment. Now what's an authoring environment? Now authoring is nothing but it's an advanced form of staging. Alright, now to explain that, let us imagine you're working for a client who's got a medium-sized client. So there, you might find 2 or 3 people who are making this to the data that is there within it. So basically business data, that is what you sell and how you sell. That's going to be a business data, right? So the number of people making changes are going to be few, so that means they can directly work on staging. Now imagine you're working for a big client whose data is changing almost every minute. Now so here I talked about, so we are talking about data being changing every minute. So here what's happening, data is changing almost every minute, and if suppose you have to push that every minute data to production, you're going to keep pushing it very often. Now with this, what is going to happen is, if multiple teams are working, let us say you are working for a multi-brand, so that means they're selling multiple products. Take example of Amazon. So in Amazon, what do you have? You have books being sold, right? So let us say books. Then you have, let us say, stationery. Then you might have the media, the CDs and DVDs. Okay. Now all this are managed by different departments or different teams. Now what is happening? Everybody is making changes to the staging environment. Now what happens? Your books team is calling up and telling, yeah, we have made the changes, you can push the changes to the production. Now when you do push this, what happens? That's fine. We are pushing all the changes of the books team to the production. But the stationery team and the media team have not completed the task. They have been working and they have finished half their work, right? Now when you do a stage propagation, what's happening? You're pushing all the changes. That means you're pushing the finished job of books team and the unfinished job of the media and stationery team, which is not a recommended way. So for that, you use an authoring environment. So in the authoring environment, what happens? Each of this team work with their own kind of workspaces. All right. So authoring environment is nothing but an environment with a staging environment with workspaces. So in this, what happens? Each work with their own workspace. Now when some team is telling, so from what happens is, the team will work with their own workspace, and once what happens, they complete their job, they have an approver within their team. So that is a manager or somebody who approves. All right, so whatever changes you have made is fine, so we can push this to production. So what happens? Once he authorizes, that data comes into staging, and then when you do propagation, only that data moves over to production. So the books team manager has said, yeah, you have finished your job. So only that moves into staging, and that gets propagated to live. The stationary and the media team have not completed their task, so it does not move into staging. So that means when you do propagation now, only the completed job moves over to production. All right. Now this kind of environment we call as authoring environment. We're going to work with that as well. All right. So this is going to be, of course, runtime is your production environment. So your production environment is generally being built for high performance and high availability. So what do you mean by this? So high availability is nothing but you're going to have multi-tier. In each of the tier, you need to have multiple servers so that even if one of them fail, your production site is not down. All right. So that kind of a setup. We're going to talk about what you need to do for having a high availability kind of a setup. All right. Any questions till here?
Yeah, Guna, like I'm having like few questions. Like first thing is about you're saying the staging environment. The staging environment is the like having the like internal users to be run. So is it similar thing with the preview, e-commerce preview, or it's different?
Yeah, e-commerce preview which we're talking about is the authoring environment. It's an you can imagine authoring to be an advanced form of staging. Yeah, that's the authoring environment.
Okay, so e-commerce, like we're having like a store preview. If you want to preview a store, you can have to click on store preview to be done. So that's the preview environment that you are talking about is authoring environment, right?
Right. It's both staging and authoring. It can be used in both the places. So this is where we preview it.
Okay. Because I was a bit confused when you were saying like environment, and also because in production itself we'll be having in runtime environment only the production also will having one preview before you are publishing anything, you will just preview the site and then you publish, and so that it will be reflected in the production, right? In the production side, we'll be having one preview to be seen, like what was the resultant output, whatever changes you want to making for a particular product or a particular a catalog that you want to change. So that will be published.
Now, what you're talking about preview and production is more or less a comparison, right? But what you do here on staging is you make real-time changes which you push it to production. So generally we don't do preview here. It's not an authoring environment at all. You don't make any data changes here. You always make it here. You preview it here. If you think it's fine, you push it to the production.
Yeah, like for example, if you just in a production instance, if you go through any accelerator tool, particular store, then you having under the store there will be preview the.
Right.
Yeah. So that was what.
Yeah,
that
right.
Is,
that is the one. You do have that in your production setup. So that is once you log into your accelerator or management center, on your production also you have a preview. But generally we don't do preview here. We do preview here.
Okay, so that's just for previewing, but basically we'll do all the stuff in the staging environment, and then we will do all the changes. And you mean like you have like each workspace means for each, like as for Amazon it will be BSM, like books and shelf and media. So each would be having each workspace means each would be having its own separate
preview windows. Exactly.
Code should be separate for EAR file or something like
that. Not the code. It's not the code. It is the data that is different.
Oh, okay, data. Okay.
So because we are talking about business users. Business users are people who decide how you do business, like what products to sell, what not to sell, what images to assign for products, what price we sell it at. It is the business data, not our code level.
Okay, we can discuss more about it in later on session. And also one more thing, when you say like multi-tier environments, you will be discussing about like how to integrate the web servers to the WAS servers and like different web servers, not only IBM HTTP server, but also if you can like any other third party like iPlanet or how the integration, the plugin, this is also will be covered, right?
No, we're going to talk about, this course is basically focused on what IBM is listing as required for the certification, all right? And that's going to be only IHS. So I'll be covering only IHS as part of the training. IHS, the web server.
IHS. Okay. Right. So that will cover the plugin config.xml, how it should be proper.
Yeah, that part will be covered. Yes.
Okay, and basically how the web server virtual host will be linked with the WAS virtual host. How interlink.
All that part, yes, all that can be covered. All that is covered actually.
Okay, sure, okay, good enough.
Yeah, and one more thing is the preview. See, preview doesn't matter much on a production setup. Why do you do preview? So you're going to view, and if you think that there is something that is not right, you can always roll back on your staging, okay, before it hits the production. Because on production, when it hits, your shoppers are able to see it. So rolling it back at that time does not make much of a point. So it is basically preview is for staging. All right. So let's continue. Any other questions?
No, Guna, please go ahead.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
Guna, I will be just dropping on. Jagdish will be taking care. Will be here because I got another meeting to attend right now. Yeah.
all right. Fine.
Jagdish, yeah, you can. Thanks, Guna.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, sure, Pranay.
So, fine. So when you set up, one of the important steps that you will be doing is you'll be creating what is called as a commerce instance. If you said you worked with VAS, in the VAS you do a two-step process to have a real runtime. That is, you install the software stack. That is, you're installing the websphere software itself, VAS software, and then you have a runtime on top of it. You create a profile. In commerce, we don't do directly a profile creation. What we do is we install the VAS, but we create a profile from commerce, and we call this as instance creation process. So we create an instance. Now instance creation in turn creates a VAS profile. All right. So this is going to be the runtime. All right. So the way you set up WCS is going to be slightly different from your typical VAS installations. So in WCS, you don't create a VAS profile directly. Instead, what you do, you create a WCS instance that in turn creates a VAS profile.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to talk about how to create this commerce instance using a tool called websphere commerce configuration manager. You can also do this, of course, if you're going to use Unix platform, it is going to be basically command line. So we're going to talk about both ways how you can do this. Then we're also going to talk about migration. So if suppose you get a new client, of course you're going to start off with WCS 7, but not all your projects are going to be direct WCS 7 projects. Some of them are going to be older clients who have been working with older versions of WCS, and they want to migrate to newer versions to enable all the new features that are available. All right. So we do also have this migration process. We're going to talk in brief about how do you do migration from one version to the current version WCS 7. So using the different migration tools, we're going to talk about that. Now, it's not always that your installation will be clean. Sometimes you do have failures. So how do you troubleshoot your installation failures? I have mentioned configuration and migration task failures. Of course, migration we're going to talk about. Configuration we're going to keep it for a later session. Okay. So we basically we're going to talk about installation and migration troubleshooting here. And one more topic that I'm covering under the installation section is how does WCS support global features. So that is global features like multiple currencies and multiple languages. So it's a global product. It can be used in any part of the world. So when you are going to install this for a client in a different region, you have to support their local currencies and the local languages. Otherwise, if suppose it's going to be only English and only US dollar, it's not going to do much. So you need to have a global product. So your WCS is built with that in picture. So WCS can be used in a global environment. So it's not just you can use it anywhere. You can have within the same WCS installation multiple e-sites where you can have one e-site in English and US dollar, another e-site in, let me say, Chinese and whatever the Chinese currency is. You can have another one in Spanish and whatever the currency is. So like this, you can have with a single implementation, with a single installation, you can have multiple global support, globalization support. Okay. So we're going to talk about how WCS supports this global features and how to enable them. All right. So this is going to be our second section wherein we are more or less getting our platform ready. All right. Any questions here?
Yeah, Guna, using configuration manager, you can create an instance.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
We can create.
So using this, you can do clustering also, Guna.
No. Clustering you use deployment manager console like VAS, your traditional this one. So this is only to create this first commerce node. Okay, we'll talk about how you set up a cluster also, because that's part of your production setup, multi-tiered environment. Your production is going to be, runtime is going to be clustered. We're going to talk about how to create a cluster as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Right.
Okay. Now, next is the most important WCS specific topics that we're going to talk about. So whatever we're going to discuss in this are WCS specific, because some of them here are going to be vast also, but this is going to be the purely WCS specific. And what are we talking here? Now, in the previous slide, we talked about how do we set up how do you set up WCS infrastructure? But your WCS, is mainly used for selling products. For that, you need to have an online store. So here we'll be talking about how do you publish an online store. So WCS comes with what you can call it as pre-modeled online stores. So that is, it's got what are called as starter stores. Now, this starter store, what happens? You have the general starter store flows. In a store, online store, what is the general flow that you might need? You might want to browse your products. So that is, you want to let them browse the catalog, or it could be even search the catalog. So once they narrow down on the product that they want to buy, what do? They add it to their basket, the shopping cart, and then they do the checkout flow. In checkout flow, they provide their details, their personal details. It could be address, the shipping and billing address, and the payment details, whatever, and that flow. And then you might also want to have the user loyalty program, some kind of a loyalty program. How can you have loyalty program? So users should come and register, and you will monitor their purchases, and based on their purchases, you will give some kind of a loyalty program to them. So that could be it. And apart from that, today e-commerce is all about marketing and selling with different types of promotion, or giving in some promotion wherein you sell the products that are not selling much, or you're catering to customers. So what you might do is you might integrate with some kind of analytics tool, and this analytics tool will tell you, so that is, most of your shoppers are women who are above age 40. So that means you're not selling products to men or women who are less than 40 years. So what you might do, you might think, all right, so why are we not selling? So you might come up with products which are catering to this kind of strata. So that is what you decide from this marketing. So your WCS tools also needs to have, your online store needs to have this kind of functionality where it captures this particular data, and you can analyze this data and get more conversions, more sales. All right. So these are what are called as store archives. So that is, WCS provides you all this functionality as archive files, like how you get all different archive files, Java archive files, then you have the resource archive files, or your enterprise archive files, whatever. So similarly, you have those online stores as store archive files. So you need to publish one of them to start off with. So your team will publish one of them, and then your developers will customize it as per your customer requirements, your client requirements. They will make the changes. So we'll have to understand what is the business model here that your client is following. So that is, what type of business he's doing, whether he's selling it directly to his consumers, or whether he's selling it to other businesses. So based on that, you will have to decide which is the right store archive for him and publish it. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the different business models and which business model suits which store archive and store assets. So we'll publish that particular store archive to support that particular client's business requirement. All right. So this is one of the important steps. So I've just put this separately because this is more of a WCS functionality, though this comes under the installation process. So your environment setup is not complete till you finish this particular part. But I have here because this is more or less a WCS kind of a functionality. All right. Questions here?
Oh, okay, fine. So you are going to conduct to store all kind of stores like mobile store and then medicine store.
Yeah, I'll be talking about how do you publish in general. So it could be any store.
Okay.
So you could publish a medicine store, you could publish a Aurora, it could be a B2B direct, whatever you need. Right? So general steps to publish a store. All right. Now,
okay.
Yeah, we are also going to talk about organization, groups, users, and roles. we discussed you can have multiple stores. Like I told, one Spanish store, one Chinese store, one US related English store, whatever. So you can have multiple stores. Now when you have these multiple stores, so let us say you have multiple stores. So with your WCS setup, you can have multiple stores. It could be even 30, 40 stores having a single implement. So a single WCS implementation having multiple stores. When you have, let me say this is the Chinese store, this is the US store, and this is the Spanish store. Now you'll have different teams managing each of this particular store. So when a person manages something, when he is making some configurational change, now we want this change to apply to only one particular store. So that is, let me say he is updating the Chinese store. We update here. So that is what we generally do is we create organizational structures. We create one organization called Chinese, or let me say this is a US organization, then that organization, then the Spanish organization. Then within this organization we create users and assign them roles. So you'll have different roles. We'll talk about the production, the marketing manager role, the system admin role. So like this you have different roles. Now from the role, different functionality will be given to them. So you group them like this. So what happens is when a person or when a user with a specific role in the Chinese organization, when he makes changes, it does not reflect other organizations. All right. So we need to have this kind of functionality, control functions. So that's what this one is. So we're going to talk about how to multiple organization and push the users to different organization and give them roles so that one task does not interfere with other kind of stores. So that, like let me say US decides to sell particular phone, let me say iPhone at a cheaper price. So they want to change the price to things. So when they change this particular price, we don't want that price change to reflect the Chinese store, Spanish store. So this is what is this organization, and within the organization we have users and groups of users having right?
Yeah.
Now this is what we're going to talk about in this particular section. And you got a question here?
No, Guna. Okay, we are okay.
All right. Next thing is your WCS has to send emails. Right now, these emails could be an email, which is sent immediately. So when I come and register online, you immediately send me a welcome mail. When I place an order, you send me an order confirmation mail. So when I say I forgot my password, you immediately send me a password reset. You need to send emails interactively, or it could be even bulk messaging. So marketing mails you're sending as a promotional venture to almost all your registered users. So your setup should be able to send emails. So we're going to talk about how do you integrate your WCS with the email server so that WCS can send emails to your mail server and the mail server can forward to whichever mailbox that it's supposed to send it across. So email configuration is one more thing that we'll talk about. We are also going to talk about scheduler jobs. WCS, apart from, so when we set up an environment, we use different types of schedulers, the operating system level schedulers, and WCS also has got some built-in schedulers to run some WCS functionality. All right. So these commands are visible only within the, not at your operating system. So you need to have schedulers running tasks at particular times, specific times. So we're going to talk about how do you configure the jobs within WCS. And of course, it's not only the WCS that is necessary. Sometimes there are some schedulers at some level, like your stage prop. Like I told you, stage propagation from one system to another system. This is going to be an operating system function. So you combine the WCS scheduler with WCS operating system schedulers to get the complete thing. But what we are going to talk about is the WCS schedulers. All right. Now,
Okay.
all right. Now the next topic that we're going to talk about is build, package, and deploy your custom assets. Now we talked about publishing an online store, but once your online store is ready, you need to customize it. Every customer client is going to have unique requirements. Developers come into the picture and they customize it. Now when they customize it, you need to export that they have customized from your repositories, whatever they are, and then package them and deploy it onto your servers. So we're going to talk about how do you do this manually. WCS has a built-in tool, a build and deploy tool, which we're going to talk about today, and we're going to see how to use this particular tool to deployment to do this WCS service. Okay. Now this might look like a small point, but this might take about 6 to 8 hours of session to understand this particular tool. It's not a complex tool, it's a simple tool, but you need to understand how to use it. So we're going to build, package and deploy the custom assets that your developers have customized for your specific client. All right.
I mean, this is like anti-script like.
Yeah, this WCBD, it's a tool. WCS provides a tool called WCBD, Website Commerce Build and Deploy Tool. This is based on.
Oh, okay, sure. So it's a inbuilt product or external?
It's an inbuilt product. So we are going to talk about what is inbuilt within WCS. Of course, we use external products, but we are going to be WCS specific. So we're going to talk about the tool that WCS provides.
Okay, fine.
Now, we are also going to talk staging. We talked about staging, right? Now, here we are going to talk about staging propagation. Like discussed in the previous section, that your business teams will make changes to the staging, and once they say, yes, we have done, we need to push this data to the production, you need to staging propagation. That's what we're going to do here, learn here. How to do the staging propagation, how to schedule it, to do it during off-peak hours, whatever, and then troubleshoot if it fails. So we're going to talk about that part in this section using website commerce staging. We're also going to talk about data load utilities. Now, if there's one or two products, you can use these tools like earlier we were using Accelerator, now it is the management center, the log tools. So wherein you add products. Now this is fine when you have one or two products or even let me say 10 products, but when you have hundreds of products to be loaded, you can't do manually, so you need to have tools. So WCS provides a tool which is used for loading this kind of data, so bulk data. All right. Now this could be product data, it could be user data, it could be any data. We're going to talk about how to use this particular tool to load data into a catalog, or it could be a WCS database. All right. So two sections. We're going to talk on this part: how does staging work and how do you do data load. We are also going to talk after that about workspaces. We discuss about what is workspace. Workspace is nothing but it's your authoring environment. So we discuss about staging and authoring environment. So this is going to be your authoring environment. We have set up the authoring environment. Here basically we are going to learn how to use your authoring environment. Right? So you're demonstrating the knowledge on workspace, how to basically use the workspace or the authoring environment. Now, we are also going to talk about how to enable social and mobile commerce. Okay. Now today it's not about just selling online. So you have this mobile stores. You also have integration with social networking sites so that people can come and like your products. So that way your products are reaching higher. So if I like one of your products, that means it is seen on my profile page. And if it's seen on my profile page, all my friends who are viewing my data are going to view your product. So that means that way you're going to have much more exposure. So WCS is built for this kind of social commerce, social networking sites. So we're going to talk about that as well. Then, of course, you can't have an e-commerce site without having payment plugins integrated. So we're going to talk about generally how payment, different kind of payment gateways are integrated with your WCS environment. Of course, your developers will be doing the major work of customizing the plugin to work with WCS, but it's our job to make sure it works in our runtime environment. So the nuances that is necessary to understand the payment flow is what is understood here. All right.
Yeah.
Questions
okay.
here?
All right.
All right. Now this is the main part where we talk about WCS specific functionality. Now once you have done all, you're more or less ready for going live. So that means you have a store, online store ready, and your developers have customized it and you deployed it. You configured the users, groups, and rules that is necessary. You have the email, you have the scheduler jobs that is necessary. So you have to work with staging, data load, workspaces, and you've enabled almost all kind of functionality, including payments. All right. So your more or less ready for going live. So the next sections talk about once you go live, what are the tasks that you generally perform. Okay, so we have 4 sections. One is a maintenance and monitoring section. So here basically we talk about how do you update your system and also how do you monitor the server health. So basically we are going to talk about how do you install fix packs and feature packs to enable new functionality, and how do you fix your bugs, whatever the product related bugs that you have. We're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about the different log files that are available within WCS and how do you use them, or basically how do you understand them, how do you troubleshoot them. Coming from the websphere background, you already might have some knowledge, but let us look into WCS specific logs here and how do you analyze those log files. Now, another important monitoring task and maintenance task that you perform is what is called as the database cleanup. Now, WCS provides a cleanup tool called as the DB clean. Now, your WCS database keeps growing on a very huge scale. So that means your database, basically if you are having hundreds of products, the transaction, we discussed about the transaction, people coming and browsing your pages and shopping and buying products. This is the general shopping transaction. But apart from that, if you have enabled analytics, so then you're monitoring how many people hit your page, how many people opened how many pages, and how many people added the product. Once they went to the product page, how many added to their cart, and how many did a checkout. Now all this data is important for your marketing team to analyze and come up with ways to have better conversion rates. Now all this is going to clog up your database. So you need to clean up your database on a periodic basis. So here we're going to talk about how do you use the DB clean tool to clean up the data. So we don't use general delete SQL statements. We have specific tools to do DB clean. Now this is generally used so that you don't lose some data which is necessary. All right. So like what happens is, if suppose let me say you are deleting all right, some products. Let us say some products are removed from your catalog and you're deleting it. So you are telling delete all products which have been deleted, all right, or whatever. So what happens in this case is, if you're running a SQL query, it will just find out what all you have marked for delete and you might delete it. But let me say some of the products have some order which is not fulfilled yet. So that means somebody has placed an order for that particular product and this product has become obsolete, but you have still not fulfilled it. So that means to fulfill that order, you have to know what is the product that that particular person has placed order. If suppose you delete that particular product by running a SQL query, what's going to happen is you're going to lose the data about what order I placed. So that's why you use the DB clean tool. So if you use the DB clean tool and you say delete all the products which are marked for delete, it will make sure that all the products are deleted which does not have reference to other information that you might need. Like if suppose there are some active orders, it will not delete such products. So DB clean is such a tool. We're going to talk about how to use this particular tool for cleaning up your database. Now in the previous section we saw that we configured scheduler jobs. Now scheduler jobs are important for your process that should run at the background, and you need to monitor it whether all these jobs are running properly. So monitoring this scheduler activities is one of the monitoring tasks that you perform on a regular basis to check your server health. So we're going to talk about that. Now one more maintenance task that you might generally do is backing up whatever the resources that you have. It could be a database, it could be a configuration, it could be a ER, your application itself. So here we talk about how do you back up resources for disaster recovery in case you have a failure. Well, of course, today, we have multiple zones. We're talking about cloud infrastructure. When we talk about cloud infrastructure, we do have multiple zones to avoid any natural calamity also, a natural disaster. But even in that case, we'll have to do a backup process. Okay, so we'll be talking about how to do this backup procedures. All right. So this is section we're going to talk about mainly monitoring and maintenance. Any questions here?
Okay, Puna. Okay, we are fine.
Next part is about security. Now, being an online application, I come and use my credit debit card at your site. Now, how much care are you taking about this particular data? So, if you're not taking care, what might happen? My cards might get misused somewhere else. So, which is a major security risk. So, here we're going to talk about what kind of WCS security you have and what kind of authentication module do you have. So, now security is for whatever security I talked about now. Authentication model is people who have access, because people can come and view your data. So that means I have made a shopping payment in your card in this one. So my card data might be saved in your database, but of course not the full data, but whatever data that is saved. You don't want people to come and read that. So what kind of authentication model you have and what do you have? We're going to talk about what is the WCS security that you have, and of course. WCS, as you know, is nothing but an application on WAS. So we're going to talk about WAS security as well. What are the different levels of WAS security that you have? So, and WCS provides security using what is called as access control mechanisms. Okay, so it manages what you can access and how you can access and at what level you have access using this access control policies. We're going to talk about how do you configure and manage this access control policies. And of course, all your different servers, you can integrate them with a single LDAP server for a single sign-on kind of functionality. And of course, all communication between servers and between the browser and your application also should be encrypted using SSL certificates. So here we're going to talk about SSL certificates as well. So this is more or less your WCS kind of functionality. We'll talk about that. Now, one more important thing that we talk about being WCS specific is business auditing. Now we just talked in the previous sections that business users can come and make changes to the way you do business. They can change the price, they update the product image, they can change the product, add new product, remove products. Now when they're doing it, you don't want some misuse to happen. So you want to audit what this business is doing. So in case there is some wrong updates, you can find out who did it if you are enabled business auditing. That's what this is. This is not the end user auditing, it is the business team. So let me say somebody went and modified some price, or somebody went and deleted some very important product from your catalog. So you need to know who did this. So this is what this business auditing is about. How do you enable this auditing and how do you track this auditing is going to be discussed here. And today, PCI compliance is one topic that is being discussed in almost all kind of merchant establishments. It could be online stores, it could be physical store, whatever, PCI, payment card industry, security standards. So we're going to talk about what is the PCI data security standards that you'll be following for your WCS tool and what does WCS offer by way of PCI compliance. We're going to talk about this section and this security part. Any questions here?
Okay, Guna, fine.
Okay. Fine. Going on to the next section is performance tuning. Of course, we are not going to performance tuning specialist at the end of this particular training, but we should be able to troubleshoot if there's a sudden drop in performance. From that aspect, we're going to talk about performance tuning here. Okay? So we are not going to talk about how do you tune up your application so that you have performance. Okay, we'll be talking about what are the good practices, but tuning your performance of your WCS application is going to be a long time task. It's not something that you can do it and when you just come get some data, analytics data, then you find this is the problem area, how can you fix it? So it's not that. It's a continuous process. As your business keeps growing, this process is going to be continuous. So you'll have performance experts as part of your team to do that particular job. So in case you have a sudden drop in performance, how do you troubleshoot it? So here what we are going to talk about is what are the recommended settings that you should for your e-commerce sites or WCS sites in general. And one more thing is cache, a component of WAS, is a must for WCS sites. So we're going to talk about how do you configure Dynacache and how do you use the cache monitor application, how do you use this Dynacache is what we're going to discuss in detail here. Okay. Now your WCS site does not work without Dynacache, and it gives you a very terrible performance. So Dynacache is a required component. So how do you implement it, how do you use it is what we're going to discuss here, Dynacache. And like I told, we'll be not using any specific tools for measuring performance, but we'll be talking about how to use the PMI module that is available in WAS to measure the performance of your site. So we are just going to have a benchmark, and if there's a sudden drop, we compare our current results with the benchmark results and then find what component has changed, and we fix it if there's a sudden drop in performance. All right. So from that aspect, we're going to look into how to use this PMI tool. Now, you also be performing database tuning. We discussed your database is going to be quite huge. So if you don't tune up your database, also you're going to have problems. So here we're going to talk about what are the database performance related tasks that you'll be performing. Apart from DB clean, there are so many tasks that you'll be performing, reorg, like that. So again, WCS specific database performance tasks is what we're going to look from here. All right. So we're not going to talk about how do you become a DBA here. So not from the DBA perspective, from as a WCS admin, what are the things that you'll be performing on database to get to have a good performance. And of course, we're going to talk about the WAS optimization techniques. Yeah, when we talk about JVM settings, so what are the recommended settings and how do you optimize your WAS is what we're going to talk about in this particular section. Okay. Any questions?
Here we are going to discuss about the database tables which are related to product.
Yeah. In this next section, we're going to talk about this one. Use data and commerce database tables for troubleshooting. Here we're going to look into the trying to understand the schema, like what tables are used for what functionality. We're going to, of course, there are about 700 odd tables, so understand each and every table is not going to be feasible, but I will give you a method to find out where do you store a specific data. I'll give you a flow, how you find out, like if suppose somebody tells my password, I'm not able to recover my password. Of course, passwords are hidden, but if suppose you want to know where the user password is stored, I'll be showing a process, how do you find out in which table this password is stored. If somebody says this particular product description is not correct, so we look into how do you find out where this particular product description is located. So we're going to talk about that part here. I'm going to give you a way on how to navigate and find a specific data within the particular table. All right? Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But this is more or less a tuning performance that we're doing here.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Now, the last section that we'll be talking about is support and troubleshooting. Now, whatever you do, it's not, your environment will not give you problems. So sometimes you're going to have trouble, and how effectively you shoot and bring up your setup is what matters. So here we're going to talk about how do you troubleshoot different WCS components, and we're going to talk about generally how you analyze a problem, a WCS problem, and we're going to talk about how do you analyze the log files for problem determination. So we're going to just talk about the format of your log file, and is there a tool for, we're going to talk about log analyzer tool to analyze the log files that you get. So basically WCS logs and WAS logs mainly. So because we are talking about runtime, so runtime is all WAS logs. So we're going to talk about how do you look into these logs and enable additional traces to get more information about a specific problem. Okay, and like I said, we're going to talk about how to find out which data is stored in which table. We're going to go through a mechanism on how you find out. So understanding each of the 700 tables is not going to be easy. In fact, I've been working for 7 and even now I might know only about 70 or 80 odd tables, what it contains. But if suppose I want to find out all the other data, type of data, we always go through this particular process, find out where that specific data is stored. So I'll give you a flow. One more runtime issues that you generally come up with is payment processing. So users will always tell, I made the payment and it's already debited from my account, but the order is not shipped yet. Okay, so what could be the issue? So your business team looks into it and they find that that particular payment has not been delivered to your business account. So they want to know what has gone wrong. The user is telling the payment's through, but the business is telling no, we have not received the account. So they want to know where exactly something has gone wrong. So how do you troubleshoot the payment processing issues? Basically, why here? Because this is not something that you find only from the logs. You'll have to look into the database tables. All right? So that's why payment processing is something that they have mentioned in the troubleshooting section, because they are table related. So you'll have to get some data from the payment processing database tables. All right. So we're going to talk about payment processing issues. Then how to use the self-help tool support and troubleshooting. So IBM has provided so many tools which you can use to analyze and to troubleshoot when you have issues. So we're going to talk about that. We're not going to go into detail about how to use each of this tool. I'll just give you an introduction about what tools I use generally in my day-to-day activity, so that you can learn about how to use that particular tool. I'm not going to train you on how to use that particular tool. I'll just give you a gist about what I use that particular tool for and what you can do. There are a lot of information where you can learn about how to use those particular tools. We'll be talking about those tools. And finally, how do you approach IBM for help? So if suppose you get into a problem, you need to sometimes reach out to IBM to get their support, the general product support that they provide. So how do you raise PMs is also something that we're going to talk about. Okay. So this is going to be a support troubleshooting section. All right. Now this is going to be your course. Okay. So generally it takes about. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
Is part to content how to